I drove all night, crept in your room, woke you from your sleep to make love to you.
Jesus Christ.
Is that all right? I drove all night. Welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is track 1, I Drove All Night, of Las Vegas Queen Celine Dion's album, One Heart. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
Wow, I feel I don't know, violated. And now that I know it's Celine Dion who's doing it, I'm sort of even more creeped out by this horrid spectacle. Oh my goodness.
Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Not bad. I was trying to figure out, is that the same? That's not this different song they're using in the Derek Jeter commercial where he's driving a Jeep from his private airport terminal, from his private air
Is that the Roy Orbison song, I Drove All Night?
No, it's the High Dive. Okay, I guess that's who's doing it, but whatever, it's a cover. But the point is, it's a very affecting commercial where like storms are in the area and Derek Jeter can't take his private jet to be with his family. So he's going to drive all night in this Jeep. I don't know. I assume it's Grand Cherokee because that's the model I remember. The Wagoneer.
Man.
It is originally a Roy Orbison song.
So it's a cover of her.
This one is. I don't know about Rob's thing.
I drove all night. I remember that one, yeah. See, there you go. Roy Orbison sings that song. Not to be like, I don't know, reverse sexist about this, or maybe it's just sexist. It sounds creepier when Roy Orbison's doing it, but it does, when Celine Dion's saying that, it's sort of like, it's creeping me out in a different way. I'm not quite sure.
So we're off the rails here, but I'm just going to say this. I think Roy Orbison makes these things work, but he's like that meme of like, "Oh, you're sweet" versus "Hello, human resources."
Right,
For some reason, Roy Orbison can sing a lot of things where like other people, like your eyebrows would go up a bit and you're like, well, that's an odd sentiment.
Yeah,
but
like
Roy
Prince
Orbison's
might also
like,
get away with that one. You know what I mean? In a way,
yeah.
But like Garth Brooks, not sure.
Welcome.
Anyway, Drew, how are we doing?
Welcome
how are
to
we
this
on
podcast. If you're new to this podcast, welcome, and I'm sorry. If you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode. Much less Roy Orbison talk. Apologies for that. But it assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1. Every month we release an ad-free version of the podcast along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What's going on this month, Denny?
Well, Cyndi Lauper also covered that song, and now I'm back on board. Now I'm like, okay, great, drive all night, absolutely. I'll stay up watching races that are start at 10 o'clock and qualifying that starts at midnight. But we'll get to that in a second. If you want to stay up until midnight watching a documentary that is available on Hulu, you can do so and prepare for our upcoming patron-exclusive podcast on Brawn, which has a subtitle that sounds something like The Impossible F1 Story, something like that. The Keanu Reeves Brawn series. It's 4 episodes long. They're about an hour a pop. At the risk of spoiling the podcast, I really enjoyed them. So I think I'm going to just do a preemptive recommendation from Danny, at least, that these are definitely worth checking out. Hulu is not sponsoring this podcast.
I don't know. They might be. I don't look at the ads.
That's true. Who knows? It could be Hulu. It could be Blue Chew. It could be anything. Who knows? But you know who's definitely sponsoring us is our incredible title sponsors. Mojo Nixon Gaming, Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDoc.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foot, Abdullah Al-Thani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us, The Space Above Us podcast, $, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Valtar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Humberto Roca, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research, Lachlan the Madden Man, Jason Kelly, and Tracy Family welcomes Nico. Welcome to all of you to the penultimate episode of the year as well. It's crazy. Can we all admit that we did not realize that Abu Dhabi was coming up this weekend?
Dude, not until I opened this browser window to connect to our chat room here.
I was sitting
a little mad about it.
December.
I was so strange
when they've started doing it.
Yes. Thank you, Rob.
Abu Dhabi 21 was mid-December.
Right.
Yeah. So I also just thought there's no way that they are, booking these cars from Las Vegas to Abu Dhabi.
Right.
Abu Dhabi is what they put on, the box in the Looney Tunes when the oh my God, what's the name of the rabbit?
Bugs Bunny?
When they ship Bugs Bunny to a far off land, it's always Abu Dhabi.
Oh yeah, it's like when you see Abu Dhabi, or is it Abu Dhabi? I always feel it's Abu Dhabi, or it's I know what you mean. It's like it's a word that's used for far and distant land.
Right.
There's another one though, isn't there? Like Outer Mongolia, people say. Albuquerque, is that what they'd say in America? So I was sitting in to dinner and I was like, I just got to double check that we're not at Yas Marina this weekend. I mean, there's no way we are. That would just be insane. And I asked Siri, and she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "The race is on November 26th." And I was like, "Well, that can't be right. I'm just going to double check online." And then I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it was. And I was like, "I'm just going to check the F1 website just to make sure, because this just seems like it's not right." Like I was like doubting Thomas for the Yas Marina Grand Prix. I needed 3 times. Then the cock crowed. And then I jumped in Discord and I was like, lads, we need to change this document. Yas Marina is on this. It's crazy, right? Crazy. That must be the quickest. Like, that must be the furthest 2 races that are on a doubleheader that I can imagine.
Is that actually around the world?
A lot during the race weekend. And people were like, this is one of the things making it really hard is Abu Dhabi's next. But I was thinking like, yeah, I guess that would be tough, even with like a 2-week turnaround. Yeah, that could be nasty.
Exactly, right? Can you imagine the jet lag of going from? I mean, I guess they got an extra day because this race was over at
effectively Saturday night. Yeah.
Saturday night, but yeah, could you imagine the jet lag? Must be that's nuts. That's like it's got to be a 20-hour flight. It's got time wise, it must be like 10, 12 hours difference. Is
just you got to drive your Jeep.
Drive all night. Exactly. Yeah. Celine Dion is going to be in great condition for this race, as are Roy Orbison, Cyndi Lauper, and whoever else.
If you see Celine Dion, don't travel by boat.
No, that's true. Very good.
So we have a lot to get to it. So let's just go for it here. The grid: Charles Leclerc pole position at the inaugural. I guess not the inaugural. The inaugural circuit. The Grand Las Vegas Strip Circuit.
The other ones were technically known as the Caesars Palace Grand Prix.
Right.
So this is
it's the inaugural Las Vegas. Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Great. Well, congratulations to Charles Leclerc. Qualified second was Carlos Sainz, his Ferrari teammate. However, Sainz hit a manhole cover in speaking of street circuits and their inaugural races.
It's a drain pipe cover, remember? We thought it was a manhole cover.
There's a difference?
But it was a weird little water valve cover. Yeah, because it's about the size of a hockey puck versus a proper manhole.
Okay. So completely different from Baku. But it sucked up into his car. It damaged his chassis, engine, and battery, and ceased free practice 1 entirely. Because of safety reasons. Ocon also picked up some damage because of it, but Sainz had to replace some power unit elements and was penalized 10 grid places.
Man.
Which even other teams were like, I don't know if that is fair.
They have to add a force majeure clause in there for next year. I think everyone at this stage was like, that is so harsh. That is absolutely... But I mean, they can't change the rules, right? The rules are the rules, and there's no clause there for it. But
you know what they can do is what they do for every time someone DNFs in Q1, which is so-and-so races at the steward's discretion, right? I mean, that might also be factored in to the rules of qualifying that they can do that. But I don't know why the rule of cool just can't be obeyed here.
Yeah, it seems so harsh.
Imagine making any exception to it right now would require team sign off, right? Like I think like nobody's going to be like, nobody in P3 is going to be like, yeah, let's make sure Carlos keeps that P2.
Right.
But did any of you see did you watch the free practice?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
see it happen.
I didn't see it live. I tuned in and saw the red flag and was like, "Oh, what happened?" And went back.
I have a collection of footage from the stands here that racefans.net has collected that I'll put in the show notes.
It was very incident. Peculiar when you're watching it live because they did not show the replay of it for a long time, but it seems like at one stage, whoever the American co-host was on the F1 commentating.
Oh, it's James Hinchcliffe. He's Canadian.
Was it? I overheard him say, "Are we not talking about how it happened yet?" or something. There was a weird like radio crosstalk moment, and they didn't show the replay of the manhunt because I was going back to see what happened, and I saw Sainz get out of the car, so I was like, "Well, he hasn't hurt him. It's not like something that they're not showing for that reason." But they didn't show it for ages, like 10 minutes more. And they had all the angles, but they just decided not to. It was very strange. And then obviously the session was red flagged, and then, or it was going to come back, and it kept, we're going to start. And then eventually it was cancelled. And then P2 was then delayed until like, was it 2 a.m. or something? But then
I think it might have been
2:30. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Then it kept getting delayed as well. So it was just like,
we may as well talk about that right now too, because the security they had at the track was only booked until 1:30 a.m.
So
the fans had to leave.
Right. That's why okay.
Can you imagine paying however many thousands of dollars, Danny, that we were looking at those tickets, and then getting kicked out at 1:30 a.m. having seen no cars?
Well, I mean, you got like 4 minutes. That's like 250 quid a minute, I guess.
I think 4 cars set times before the incident. So you literally saw like maybe 4 cars do laps and then like 5 go around.
Yeah, hours earlier. Yeah.
This was one of those situations where people who I do not talk about F1 with were either texting me or on like WhatsApp or something saying like the next day saying, "Oh, is this Las Vegas Grand Prix a complete catastrophe?" And like, to me, it's like not like to me, it's like, oh, what Baku happened. You know what I mean? Like, every time there's a new street circuit, they try and nail down all those things, and usually there's some part of the track that they didn't anticipate was going to be such and such. But it's just, I think the time of day is what really messed this one up because it just forced. And obviously they
don't have access to the track after 6 a.m. at all. Like it's got to be cleared for a reopening for business. So it's like you got that angle to it. But yeah, I think there was like a real eagerness to be like, what a joke, what a catastrophe, for F1 to have this happen. And it's like, did you see what the accident was? Like, it's not that the cover came off; it's that the entire body of whatever that like valve cover is, like the metal sheared. As far as like when they were showing pictures of the guys like holding the thing, it's not like the lid came off. It's not like a manhole cover jumping out of its little socket. It's as if the metal like of the entire manhole got ripped apart. Except here it's a tinier thing. So like it's such an unusual failure. I guess the only thing you could sort of pin on FIA for not dotting this particular I is you probably could know what material that entire assembly is made out of, and like the strength ratings for these things is pretty well known. You can just see what the downforce load is. The suction is going to be under the car, the ground effect, and you can see if that's going to overstress it. But sometimes metal fails just from previous wear and tear. Like this seemed like a pretty weird way for a thing like this to fail.
Then you kind of have to check the rest of them.
They fixed it in one night.
Right. Yeah. Wild. Is it true that they opened the track up for normal traffic during the day? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I didn't realize that until they were doing the race, and it was like this got rubber. It didn't get rubbered in unless you count.
It's dusty.
Yeah, exactly. The opposite happens. Yeah.
Let me continue running down the grid here. Max Verstappen assumes second place after Sainz's 10-place demotion. George Russell third, Pierre Gasly fourth, Alex Albon sixth, fifth, Logan Sargent sixth, Valtteri Bottas seventh, I'm going to keep going. Kevin Magnussen eighth, Fernando Alonso ninth, Lewis Hamilton 10th. He actually went out in Q2 and is only in 10th because of Sainz. Then Sergio Perez in 11th, Sainz 12th, Hulkenberg 13th, Ricciardo's 14th. Lando Norris, here are the McLarens. Apparently, they don't do well at low downforce circuits. And this was no exception. We got Lando Norris in 15th. Then we got Ocon 16th. Zhou 17th. Oscar Piastri is 18th. Lance Stroll 19th, although he was penalized 5 grid places for overtaking under yellow flags, which I believe was Tsunoda's spin in Q1. And then Tsunoda in 20th. So already some weird business has happened, and we have not even started the race. But let's do that.
It was
hold on. More weird business happened before the race.
Oh,
did you guys catch? Because there's some incidents at the start. But
I did not see the grid walk.
Context.
Are you going to talk about the grid walk?
No,
the grid walk was packed. It was like it was like a club, 1 a.m.
So, you know how a lot of times before races for the drivers' parade,
oh yes,
bring out vintage cars.
Yes,
it's like classic like make whom auctions type, like real cherry vintage cars. I turn on the pre-race show for the GP. This is the big hour-long Sky pre-race show, and the hosts are standing there in the starting grid, and they turn around and they observe that it appears that Pierre Gasly's looked like classic Cadillac convertible.
I thought it was Hamilton's.
Pierre Gasly's ride for the drivers' parade just vomited a ton of oil in front of the P2 grid box. And like a ton, it's like a 50-yard like oil spill, and there's a bunch of course workers out there trying to put down like the concrete powder and like brush out the oil. And so they ask pretty unnecessarily, like, do we think that's gonna affect anything? And all the drivers on the grid are like, yeah, that sucks for everyone starting the race on that line. That's a lot of oil. It's not gonna fully go away. So bear in mind as we go through the start that literally 40 minutes before the start, somebody like their pride and joy Cadillac, they were like, I got my Cadillac picked for the first Las Vegas GP drivers parade, basically died with Pierre Gasly like on the back of it, and then it puked oil all over the racing surface.
Amazing.
And then people got to watch your car towed out of the off the course. Man.
Now I'm interested to hear if it was Gasly, because Christian Horner said it was Hamilton's and like made a wry comment about it as well. So as if he was trying to blame him for for it. So now I'm like, was it him actually, or was Horner just talking it up?
If I was this happens a lot.
Oh really?
They interview the drivers about it. And they said that like because this like so often they're doing these drivers parades with vintage cars, and George Russell was like, these historical cars, it's not the first time we've seen historical cars dropping oil on the track, but it was pretty shocking to see how bad it was.
Yeah, it was a pretty big one. You should see how much of that concrete powder they had to put down. It was just like absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, if I was the race promoter, whoever's brainchild this thing was, just seeing all of these little injuries to the weekend leading up to it, I just whoever it was must just have been a bundle of nerves. Like, really, right before there's a thing, right. Please just let this race commence. And then it did, and I thought a pretty good race. Dan, you want to take us through the start?
Sure. I mean, lights out. They all go through the oil slick, get nice and lubed up on this track that already is going to have grip problems because of the dust and the cold tires and the resurfacing and everything. And then we get a little bit of vintage Max Verstappen. The owl, I'll throw it down the inside, cross my fingers, and then if I push somebody wide, I'll blame it on them. This was classic Jeddah Verstappen with that move in Hamilton that we talked about a bunch. I don't want to like overly drag on the guy, but this is just he is such a good race driver. He is so bad sometimes at these exact moments. It is like comical how often. I mean, him and Hamilton was we talked about it over and over again. It was a real like fight for track position war, right? So in a way, it made some sense there. This one just seemed completely like, I don't know, man. Do you need to do it? So
counterpoint.
Go on.
it's working for him.
I mean, you're right. It didn't. Yeah, like he didn't win he won the championship because he did a fantastic drive. He won in spite of being crashed out by Hamilton. Well, in other situations there was lots of tit for tat. I'm not negating that, but you're right. Like a lot of the time he does not get away with it, but he kind of gets away with it. And then the other issue we kept having was that whenever these things happen, not with him, we have had a lot of these 5-second penalties, which seem to be completely redundant, but we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Anyway, he throws it down the inside on this left-hander. Leclerc is ahead as they hit the apex. It's a wide apex. So there's some discussion as to where exactly the apex is. Verstappen breaks after what most people would consider the start of the turn, at least. And basically forces Leclerc fully off, like just pushes him to the fact where Verstappen doesn't make the turn either, and also ends up in the runoff. So he's just like fully pushed him out. Leclerc has to correct twice to get back on the track or to not hit him. While behind him, other drivers have problems with grip and braking as well. Alonso just does a little pirouette on his own. Nobody touches him, and he just spins around. I mean,
after having YOLO'd past like 4 cars.
He did. You're right. He did throw it down the inside a little bit. That's fair. And then he gets awkwardly sort of has that like crossing the street, you go left, I go left moment with Valtteri Bottas, who's trying to get around him.
Well,
and then just
also, so Fernando spins around and is now looking at Valtteri Bottas, who goes, and then Bottas gets hit from behind by Perez and sandwiched in between both of those cars, and then somehow hits Alonso again. I don't know. Yeah, it's a whole.
And then because he started to go again, and he was going to go around him to the right, but there's so many cars now veering around him to the right that he realized he couldn't, and so he had to turn back into Alonso to prevent gathering up more cars cutting around him.
Man,
Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz also, just massive fan of Alonso's. Despite decides to spin in solidarity at the back of the pack, or not. Well, he's at the back of the pack by the time he finishes his spin. But like there wasn't much grip going into that first turn, right? And they were all victims of that. But especially Alonso and Verstappen were, victims of their own actions as much as anything else.
I don't think so. I think this is because, particularly in Alonso's case, you can see he's got great start, and then he goes over the oil slick.
Oh, you think it's the?
He goes over the oil slick, and the car is not under his control as much anymore. And Sainz, I think, gets squirrely around the same place.
He drifts into the back of Hamilton, actually.
Yeah, but I think he was down there on that dirty line.
Okay.
Actually, that might not be true. Hamilton definitely got really shaky as he went over the oil. Like you can see, Hamilton's car struggles for grip for a minute, and I think this is why like Carlos ends up sort of piling into him a bit, because like Hamilton has to take this beat to sort of gather the car back up.
Right.
I think Verstappen probably like going over the concrete powder might have been the least affected at a lower speed to buy the oil slick. He just didn't even try to make that apex.
No, and came on the radio immediately and was saying like, I was ahead of him before I, like I don't know even if you're ahead of somebody if you're allowed to push them fully off and yourself. I think
there's like 3 car widths to his left. Like it was absurd, and then they take like 5 minutes to come back with a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, it took them a while to do it. I guess they wanted to make sure.
Send them my regards.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It is vintage Verstappen. He's back to edgelord status.
Yeah, it's a bit like, I don't know. He doesn't. I think my one issue, I don't know. I'd love to see interviews with him after the race, because he also was just like the most negative. And I get it, right? He's saying like, oh, the Vegas Grand Prix is all flash and no thunder, right? It's all spectacle and there's no good racing here. And people love Max because he speaks his mind, right? People who speak their mind are also wrong a lot of the time, right? And that sort of gets buried a little bit because confidence is such a good currency when it comes to how people think about you and your persona in fame or whatever. And I think like the one thing I dislike about Max is that he's never wrong. Like he's never contrite. I never see him like admit some sort of weakness or like or say he wasn't in the. So I'd love to see the interviews after the race, because this ended up being quite a good race, to the surprise of many of us, probably. But it was just that, and that's why I dislike his on track, because he comes across to me as a little bit of a, like, you know, like I like those mates of mine who like supported Man United and always went on about how whenever they
I don't know
won,
what that means, but I think I know.
Yankees fans, right?
Yeah.
They like whenever they win, it's because they're the best, and whenever they lose, it's like the most awful. Everyone's against me, blah blah blah. It's like that's the vibe I get.
We're
off
gonna
of
get
him.
so many emails.
I know, yeah, but sorry, Rob. And this race was like a little bit of a reminder of that, of like, because it was a really good battle between him and Charles, but like there's this sort of, I don't know. I get it though. You know, the best sports people in the world, maybe you got to be arrogant, or some of them are, right? And that's how they get to where they are.
Yeah.
But it's just not for me.
It's been so rare since we haven't seen him in a racing scenario that much this year, where he's actually, and it was a reminder of like, oh yeah, this guy races out in the gray. And he's not a very sporting racer when it's wheel to wheel. And then he spent the week reminding people that, like, yeah, this guy's a bit of a little prick. And you know, this is just comes with the territory of Max. And some people like really like the character he cuts and find the racing traits to be part of his like greatness as a sportsman. Like part of it's like the Senna-like killer instinct. Like, I'm willing to crash, or you, and people are not. The critique even back then is, well, you're making other people clean up your mistakes and you're profiting by it. But you know, I think the thing I'll say about Max kind of being a sourpuss about the entire weekend is frequently like there is often like he does take consistent lines about some stuff. And frequently, like I do find myself kind of nodding along to some of his critiques of directions for the sport. Like, you know, one of the things that, like, he did feel this thing was a bit overburdened by its need to be like this massive media event, but a lot of drivers felt that way. Like a lot of drivers were complaining about like, we are overscheduled. It's nonstop events.
I will say the opening ceremony stuff was ridiculous. So I agree with him.
They did the
on
Miami
that.
thing again, right?
Yeah, they did a lot of like introducing the drivers. They had like 6 different musical artists play on these weird stages, and then brought all the drivers in. So I agree with him on that. That's
and Max had a good quote about this where he was like, he does have a consistent, here's his real objection to a lot of like the new school F1 events. And I honestly think like this is a pretty, like, I think a lot of us would agree. His argument is these things like F1 is obsessing over like these new fans. Who can we bring to these events? And you're not making them fans of F1 as it has existed. And you're not turning them into fans of like great F1 racing. You're sort of dazzling them with spectacle, and there happens to be a race. Max's quote is that like the sport's leaning too heavily on random shows all over the place. I understand fans, maybe they need something to do as well around the track, but I think it's more important that you actually make them understand what we do as a sport. Most of them just come to party, have a drink, see a DJ play or a performance act. I can do that all over the world. I can go to Ibiza and get completely shit-faced and have a good time. That's what happens at races. People, they come and they become a fan of what? They want to see maybe their favorite artist and have a few drinks with their mates and go out and have a crazy night out, but they don't actually understand what we're doing and what we're putting on the line to perform.
Which
I think
that is a pretty succinct critique of the Liberty Media era.
I totally agree. I also think it is a very populist thing to say to hardcore F1 fans. It's going to ring really nicely in their ear, because what it's doing is creating a divide between the hardcore fans, which is people like us, and mainstream fans who do need all that extra stuff. Like Monaco largely is that. Is there history there? Of course, because they've been racing there forever. Is there like racecraft that we all really care about there? Not really. The reason people go to that race is because they're hanging out in Monaco and going to the casinos and it's flashing, it's all this sort of stuff. The majority of F1 sponsorship is all that sort of aesthetic nonsense. So like his wages get paid off that. And I think like he's not wrong. I would love the purist in me would love us to go to Portimao, right? Would love us to go to, we were talking about Malaysia before this, right? Would love to go to all of these tracks which are like, support good racing. But it's very easy to stand there and say that because it's something that like your hardcore fans and hardcore racers are going to nod along and go, he's right. but like it doesn't actually exist in reality. Like this
And
sport requires the mainstream audience to pay the wages that he's getting. So, you know, in a way I feel like, yeah, he's not wrong, but like it's a very like easy populist thing to kind of say.
Yeah, I think it's also
it's like
go ahead. Okay. I think it's a point a little bit undercut by the explosion in popularity as a result of Drive to Survive, right? If what he is saying is 100% true, you would see people just watch Drive to Survive and then completely bounce off of the actual race. But you don't. You see people paying thousands of dollars to go to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Did you have a point?
Yeah, I just feel like I think there's a bit of like you take this somewhat as like it's a fake fans type situation, but I do think because he does talk about like how much he loves the classic race venues and like those types of circuits, and I do think the part of this critique that I do identify with is Liberty seems to have a real allergy to doing anything but like a destination race where you can make it a multimedia event and like have it be really friendly to spectators who want to spectate things that aren't F1 races. And so I do think there's I do sympathize with this, especially because, you know, Danny, his wages are being paid out of like Liberty's grabbing more money off the table than it possibly could. They've imposed cost caps. You know what I mean? There's a bit of like number going up, number not necessarily going out to the teams as much in proportion to how much value is being added to the sport.
And I also think the place in which I would empathize him the most would be the fact that I do think the drivers are getting squeezed more because of all of these extra races, and that to me seems unfair. And you know what? I bet if he was completely honest, I'd say one of the reasons that he's probably the most frustrated right now is the championship's sewn up. Like he there's no reason for him to be racing. There's no reason for him to have to fly to Las Vegas, race at nighttime, do all of this press. Like it must be frustrating at the end of a long season to also have to do this stuff. But like he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna get on a mic and say that because he'll sound like a spoiled brat because he's a millionaire.
And then he shows up on race night in the Elvis suit. This is the funny thing. Right. He spends an entire week being like, "This Vegas thing sucks," and then like he's getting into the car with the fake sequins. Incredible.
Yeah. The one thing the one sentiment I think I agree with is that, you know, I think like him want the conversion. Right? Like I want the people who get drawn in by something, whatever it is, Drive to Survive or the spectacle or whatever, to be converted into Formula One fans. I mean, that's kind of why we do this podcast, right? Like to bridge that gap. And so I hope that happens. And I hope
sorry, the other thing I think that I remember what it was like during those like Schumacher dominance years where it felt like the sport was suffocating itself, where like nobody new was watching this sport. Nobody young was watching this sport. Like, so
I was, and that's why I was the coolest guy in my high school.
Right. But like, I, you know, I'm not saying it's just a balancing act, right? Because you're completely right. Like Rob's point about Liberty as well, and the whole where they're going. And, you know, I think we've voiced concerns there as well.
Well, and their assumption is just the fans don't care about racing in a lot of ways, like which I don't even think is necessarily a correct assumption. Like, I think, you know, Verstappen paints a picture of the fandom that I'm not sure is entirely fair, but I think Liberty does have this idea of like, we got to keep jingling the keys of like, here's a DJ,
no,
here's a
you got
musical
to
act.
Convert them to sustainable fans, like an actual real interest and love of the sport. And speaking of that sport, we're going to take a commercial break. Speaking of paying bills, and we're going to be back with the rest of the opening lap.
Oh my God.
We have so much more to cover. Right after this. And we're back. All those pirouetting boys out there on the track bring out the virtual safety car. Perez pits to change his front wing, along with the other pitters of Alonso and Bottas, all going on to the hard tire. And as we get back going again, lap 3, we're watching the cars go around the corner, and then a blur and some sparks fly by the camera, and we pick up Lando Norris in the barriers. And on replay, it's kind of a weird one. He just loses it coming around I think it's the turn 10 and 11 complex, spins 180 degrees on the track and then backs into the wall, slides along it, thankfully losing speed until he collides with the barriers at the runoff of turn 12.
The initial shot of that car in the barrier was alarming because it looked like he'd gone straight like headfirst into the wall, which is like the scariest type of thing that can happen in a car. And that at least it seemed like, okay, you got the brakes failed, you got the braking really wrong. But yeah, the fact that he's got this whole like loses it and then skitters for a couple 100 yards into the wall, real weird. But he ended up in the hospital.
He did, yeah.
You know, they did not clear him to leave the medical center and like go do interviews. They sent him for observation.
The other thing as well was am I right in remembering this was the crash where the wheel also came off?
Yes.
Was it this one? Yeah, which was also a bit of a
always distressing.
Yeah, you just hate to see it. I think it was JB was Jensen Button was saying that it's the suspension that's got the tether on it. So if the wheel comes off, that's not tethered, but it's very odd for it to happen. It's just a sort of it's because he hit the wall, kind of like he almost like sided into it.
Yeah,
that's what shook it out. But again, between that and the manhole cover, you're just thinking like it's one of these races where there's a lot of people right outside the catch fencing or whatever. You're just kind of thinking, anytime anything comes loose. And I just watched the Jensen Button Braun documentary stuff where one of the races is the Rubens Barrichello. Part of his car comes off. Felipe Massa catches it and hits him in the head. Right, that was that year. So I think it was top of mind as well.
Speaking of, the strip and the surroundings and stuff, I just wanted to point out, I think this track looks amazing.
The helicopter shot for sure.
Yes.
Like it is wild. It is like some Wipeout nonsense. Like, in fairness.
Yes, it's a video game track. It's the only time I've ever been like the cool night races you see in like a Need for Speed or something come to life. The helicopter shot of the cars running down the strip was just
it's unreal.
Incredible. And you know what?
It's nuts.
I love the Sphere.
Yeah, the Sphere. Do you remember? We should like cut back to. Do you remember when we were initially looking at this and we're like, "What is that big ball?" It turns out it's the safety car orb. Did you see that when the safety car came out? The whole thing went yellow and just had safety car around it. It was like some. It was like some
incredible. I did see that for the the displays, they were not allowed to use colors that like overlapped with the key the FIA indicator lights.
Okay, so like reds and greens were out, or yellows were out, or whatever.
Yeah, and then I saw like a multicam thing that went on the Sphere that was showing like different like garage views and the commentator box and all this stuff, and I was like, oh man, what a way to I just be riveted just staring at the Sphere with its like multi-view thing.
I do like it when it turns into like an emoji, like its face. I think is funny. All the shots that have gone around social media, it's successful. It's a $2.6 billion whatever.
Does it cost that much, really?
Oh it's something insane like that. Wow. Yeah. All right, another safety car, the first safety car. Stroll and Sainz pit, both also going on to hard tires. Lap 14, the Williams cars have managed to hold on to their 5th and 6th place for a few laps, but eventually they do come under fire. First from Ocon, who gets around the outside of Sargent at turn 7. Then on the same lap, Piastri, just behind, gets by Sargent with a dive down the inside of turn 14, which is at the end of that long straight. And as they come around to the start-finish straight, we get some cool visor cam action from Hamilton getting by Sargent as well into 8th place.
When did Leclerc pit?
Much later. So lap 16 is when Verstappen pits, but that's not really telling the whole story because Leclerc had caught up to him despite being on the same tire compound, and then passed him for the lead with DRS into turn 14 right before Verstappen pits.
Which was surprising, which is the one thing that I will say that maybe I'm sure Verstappen knows lots of things that I don't know about Formula One, but maybe they knew something about their performance. Maybe they knew they needed to get out ahead as quickly as possible, that they didn't have the gap on them. I know that Max's car, he opted for a higher downforce setup was it for qualifying or it must have been because it's in Parc Ferme, whereas Checo's didn't. And you could see it on the straights, just the the difference in top speed that Max was able to retain over Checo, but it wasn't what we have seen. The gap between them and the Ferrari was nowhere near. But again, it's also just part of the whole. They locked that car's development months ago because they just had outperformed everyone. So maybe just that gap is closing race by race.
Well, one lap later, Hamilton makes a dive on Piastri at the same place, and the two bang wheels, puncturing Piastri's front left and Hamilton's rear right.
Yeah.
And as more drivers come in to get off of their medium tires, Perez cycles up the order because he had pitted on lap 1 after that incident. And on lap 18 is fighting Ocon, who also hasn't pitted, or who has not pitted by this stage. For second place, since Verstappen pits, it's McLaren first. And then Perez gets by Ocon with DRS into turn 14. So we figured out where the passing happens, and it's the end of turn 14.
Turn 14. I feel like if I'm going to criticize Verstappen, I should also throw some shade Lewis Hamilton's way. It did seem like a lazy exit to that turn, or like, again, him trying to close the door maybe a little bit too much, which is what we've seen with those Albon incidents as well, where he does tend to sort of, once I have the driving line, once I have the turn, I'll just enjoy it now. And yeah, like
I
did have the thought, why does he hate rookies so much?
Why does he always send teams? That's a good point. Yeah, maybe they're not expecting it as much as other people who have raced him for years know that's what he does. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it works out in your favor. This time, both of them ended up suffering because of it.
Well, Verstappen is anxious to move back up through the field and gets by Alonso and Sainz without too much trouble. But speaking of tough racers, Russell can be a stickler. Verstappen gets a run on him around that sweeping right and then left-hander of 10 and 11, which I came to like. Then shoots up the inside of turn 12, and Russell apparently just does not see him at all and turns in Verstappen's front right, crunching into Russell's left side pod, which earns Russell a 5-second penalty.
What do you make of this one? Because it when I did side-by-sides later with Hamilton's incident and some other ones, just to see, it did seem like Verstappen was carrying a lot of speed, but also Russell just literally turns into him. So it's hard to, well, I don't think the impact was his fault at all, but I also could see that had they made the turn, I wonder what would have happened. What did you make of it?
I don't think it was a good place to be throwing your car. Like to me, like it felt very similar to the lap 1 move, where it's like, I'm coming through and you can do with that what you want, but like Russell didn't know that he was there or made the decision to just turn and cut him off, but it didn't look deliberate. It looked like he was just completely stunned to find a car there. But causing this incident does end up sealing the race for Max. Like luck is an unquantifiable quality, quality.
Preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the safety car comes out and Perez immediately dives in. It really is perfect timing. Plenty of other folks pit for new tires too, including Verstappen. And as we restart on lap 28, the field looks like...
Did they not change his front wing as well? Did they say that it was actually
all right? They opted
to
not to. Yes.
And he lost so much of his end plate. It was crazy.
It was like the entire end plate was gone.
Yeah. They were like, low downforce, whatever.
So I had assumed that maybe Leclerc was past the pit entrance when the safety car, but I guess not. Like Ferrari might have deer in the headlights did again, as far as making the call to get fresh hards on there, which is so maybe it's less that maybe it's less luck, and part of it is also that Red Bull's more proactive when it comes to making tire calls.
Yeah, it looks like Leclerc's tires were only 4 laps old at that point. No one else with such new hard tires pitted. I don't.
And they were talking about how the undercut on this one, or the overcut, right? Because the hards were having a bit of trouble getting temperature. So I can see if you're only a couple of laps in, maybe err on the side of caution. But I guess it's a safety car restart, so maybe that's a moot point.
Well, yeah. So on the restart, it looks like this: Leclerc in first, Perez second, Gasly third, who didn't pit. Same with Piastri, who was in fourth. Then Verstappen, Ocon, who also didn't pit, Stroll, Albon, who didn't pit, Russell, and Sainz. And then all the way down in 17th is Hamilton, who did take new tires. On the restart, Piastri gets Gasly for third down the inside of turn 5, I believe it is. And I think at this point, Gasly is nursing a battery issue, which is a real shame because he was doing great in this race. Lap 32, Perez has closed the gap to Leclerc with DRS, and with the wing wide open, shoots up the inside of turn 14, taking the lead of the race, having started 11th and pitted on the first lap.
Also, a great little sort of look at how you can overtake on turn 14. It was a very clean overtake. He had it basically done, 50 yards before the turn. He made it very easy.
Lap 54, Gasly still struggling, and Ocon gets by his teammate on the main straight with DRS. But Gasly comes back, getting around Ocon in the next few corners. But on the following straight, Ocon opens the wing back up and seals 5th place. Good battle. Although it's right after that we hear Ocon was told to hold position.
Yeah. That's not going to happen. I feel like you can't tell that to Ocon, regardless of who his teammate is, even somebody he likes. Yeah.
He's not going back to that garage. He's not going back to the family garage. He's not doing it.
It should also be said that Ocon started 16th. Things keep popping off, though, with Leclerc somehow catching back up to Perez despite Leclerc's older tires, and swinging by him with DRS at turn 14 on lap 35 for the lead of the race. And one lap later, Verstappen catches Perez, breezes by him along that back straight too, and Verstappen continues to have some serious pace. Lap 37, he has caught up to Leclerc, and with the help of DRS, regains the lead into turn 14.
Turn 14, that's where next year, if you're going to Vegas, folks, you know where to get your seats.
Did you see people on the overpasses?
I know they were kicking them off at some stages.
Oh, were they?
I thought so. Or maybe I'm looking at the wrong overpasses.
The view blockers, right? They're security was trying to clear the overpasses the entire weekend.
Okay. That's not like where GA can be.
No.
Well, poor Alex Albon is trying to hang on, but he just can't do it. Russell getting by him on lap 39. Then a lap later, Albon goes wide and lets Sainz and Alonso through, which drops him out of the points. Perez, meanwhile, is sticking with the second place Leclerc, who makes it easy for Perez at turn 12 when he overcooks it and goes wide, allowing Perez to sweep into second. So these guys have been back and forth for a while here.
And now we're set up for a late race ritual Sergio humiliation.
With 5 laps remaining, Hamilton has passed Albon to get into the points and is now battling with the compromised Gasly, just barely squeezing by him around that last corner, which is another good corner as they come on to the main straight. But just like Perez stayed on Leclerc, Leclerc has stayed on Perez. And on the final lap, Rob, he is within DRS range. And I feel like we've seen this many times before where we are lulled into thinking we're going to get some heroic late race move and then are disappointed. But Leclerc and Perez do not disappoint. And at turn 14, from downtown, Leclerc dives up the inside and somehow makes the corner and into second place. Perez tries to fight back, and maybe with more road he could have, but Leclerc takes second at the end by less than 0.2.
Another run
once
for the
again,
checkered
just like
flag.
last race, it did feel like Sergio was quickly reeling him back in.
Yes,
as they raced toward the line, but yeah, just ran out of space for it. Now, by all accounts, Sergio was running a high downforce setup compared to everyone else this weekend, so like he really was fighting with one hand tied behind his back in this scenario. But still, 2 weeks in a row, just brutal.
Yeah, Verstappen tried to give him a toe, but did not.
He did. You're right. Yeah, he did. Well, okay. I'm desperately trying to give him some credit here, but you're right.
Well, the thing is, I'm not sure he like. the fight was happening a ways behind him.
It was. I mean? It was for like
he would have had to really check up and try and like pull Sergio around. So it's one of those things where I think, last year, whatever it was, I did feel like, yeah, he kind of screwed Sergio because like with several laps left, they were like, could you please help him out and like give him some space. Here it was like at the last minute, dude, can you tow him? And it was like, no, man, like I'm pretty much
trying to win over here.
We did talk about last week about how long those the slipstream kind of effect works, but also dirty air too. But I mean, he was hardly going to go 4 seconds back and give him DRS, right? Like, that would have been a bit much. But I think Checo probably sick. Like, he must feel sick to his stomach. And then, of course, you have to, green rooms are bad enough, but they crammed all three of them into the back of a limousine.
All in. This is the greatest.
Wait,
this
what?
Is the greatest
I didn't see this.
Space.
Do you not see this?
You didn't see the Rolls Royce?
No. Oh my God.
Yeah,
with
fuck
camera
the
and
post-race
everything.
Green room. They put them all in a Rolls Royce. Max Verstappen had to ride in the middle seat. But
they had to kick out the poor.
Works,
did you see they had to kick
cash
out?
Cab?
Oh my God!
They've mic'd up the inside of the Rolls, and it's a Rolls Royce. It's very quiet, so you can just hear the dudes chatting as they drove down to the Bellagio for the presentations.
Oh man!
And so we got the most the best audio and the most conversation I think we've gotten in a post-race scenario in ages, helped by the fact that like Charles legitimately seemed incredibly high on the entire race. He was like, wow, that was really good. What a race. Yeah. Surprisingly good, right, guys? And
and then I think he notices
no, really good.
That the camera's there or something. I think he kind of at one stage he's like, oh wait, we're on
being
TV,
filmed.
I think. Yeah, maybe he saw the screen outside or something. Did you see the poor Red Bull engineer who's got in the car? And then they were like, "Oh no, you've got to get out, mate. Sorry." Like the guy who's gone up for the constructors, trophy. He must have ridden in the back of a, something else.
See if they still had rumble seats. If Rolls were still a proper coach builder, and we could have stuck that guy in the rumble seat.
It was very strange. They had the interview then with DC David Coulthard outside the Bellagio, but right by the fountains. But they didn't have any like cameras on the ground with them. They were all like telephoto lenses, so it just had this very odd effect where you were sort
I gotta watch this.
Also, it drove me nuts because like they're going for the end of Ocean's 11. The whole crew lines up and they stare at the Bellagio fountains.
Yes,
but because it's F1, we have to have an F1 car mounted,
blocking
the view, covered in sponsorship.
Yeah.
So the entire point of driving these guys down here and not doing a champagne celebration, they're not spraying champagne. They're going to watch a Bellagio like fountain display. And it's a meaningless shot because the guys turn around and they're staring at a model F1 car, like just parked between them and the fountain.
Yeah, but like sort of hanging in the air over the water, which all it did was evoke to me like horrifying incidents of Monaco past.
Oh my God.
Just look.
Is this a preview for what's in your book?
Well, is it the time already? Is it that time?
Oh no, sorry. The book is bad today. I'm sorry, but it's not that bad.
All right, let's run down the rest of the result here. Esteban Ocon in 4th, Lance Stroll in 5th. Where did he start? 19th. Wow.
But in a broader sense, he started on 3rd base, so let's not get carried away.
Carlos Sainz comes home in 6th, followed by Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, and Oscar Piastri rounding out the points-paying positions. He also got the fastest lap of the race, so he gets an extra point there.
Nice work, Oscar.
Behind him, we've got Gasly in 11th, followed by Albon, Magnussen, Ricardo, Zhou in 15th, then Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas, and the DNFs of Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hülkenberg, and Lando Norris. And that is the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix. Should we take it to the news? Not a lot going on here, Rob, but there's a few things you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I think one thing that just struck me, because mostly I didn't know this, a bunch of the drivers after the fact were complaining about the track surface.
Yes.
Not unusual for a street circuit. But the point of comparison that they kept making was, why can't you be more like the Jeddah circuit?
Right.
Why can't you be more like Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
If I had a nickel.
Let me think.
So, but apparently, Pirelli's Mario Isola, who is their open wheel guy, sort of oversees the relationship between Pirelli and F1. He sort of explained like what it is they do in Jeddah and like why that's not really workable here. So I didn't realize this. In Jeddah, they do this like pressure washer treatment to the circuit before the race, where they just like, I guess, beat the hell out of it with high pressure water. And as he explains, like it ages the tarmac really rapidly, so that you basically like get multiple years worth of like, you know, accumulated grip on it for like in some way, like by giving it this treatment. But given that this is a street race, you know, on streets that are like going to be publicly used, and Vegas have their own like, you know, restrictions on this, you know, it just wasn't really the right call for F1. But it's just kind of funny that everyone was like, yeah, Jeddah, now that's a track surface.
Yeah, thanks to the Build Back Better infrastructure bill, we're not allowed to weather this strip of tarmac in the middle of Las Vegas. That's crazy. I didn't realize they did that. They pay the extra $20 for the wax in Jeddah, I guess.
Well, like Russell was saying that like everything can be a racing line in Jeddah.
Right.
And, you know, they, by comparison, they were like, you know, Miami the first year, there's no, you go off the line, you're dead in the water. So it was just kind of funny that the universal critique from the drivers was all like, we want this to be like this one particular track that we're all obsessed with.
It should be mentioned as well that the Norris incident, there was some scuttlebutt afterwards about it being the result of a bump in the surface, that a lot of the drivers, you can see the end plates getting skidded off at the point at which he hit it. And I guess there was dirty air and it's a little bit of a turn, and he just kind of hit that bump, and it all contributed to it. But yeah, that I think McLaren are launching some sort of appeal or something with regard to that. So I don't know if that'll be something they maybe flatten out a little bit for next year.
We have answered the question why they're not doing force majeure rules to sort of allow for this, because you got the Carlos Sainz situation, unequivocal, like part of the track whipped up, like smashed up his car, and then Lando Norris loses the car under race conditions, and they're like, track was messed up. You can't hold that against us.
That's a good point.
Well, Rob, legal action is being pursued over
in F1.
Yeah, what? Over this whole manhole thing. From two angles. Number one, from the spectator angle, this article from Autosport.com points out. Lead lawyer Steve Dimopoulos, well known in Las Vegas for personal injury cases through billboards and TV advertising.
Yes, one of these guys.
Has noted, quote, "We will vindicate the rights of the fans that traveled great distances and paid small fortunes to attend, but were deprived of the experience."
Oh my God.
Seeking $30,000 per spectator.
This guy was he was up at 2 a.m. eating like noodles out of a packet, just going, this is my latest big hit.
He was watching Free Practice 1, and then the Leo DiCaprio pointing at the television meme.
Yes, exactly. Like class action dollar signs rolled into his pupils, you know,
frantically like, is there ink in the printer? Is there ink in the printer? I gotta get down to the circuit exit right now.
They don't even have a fax machine. What am I gonna do? And the other angle is Ferrari. Fred Vasseur, team principal of Ferrari, saying that, quote, "Compensation will be a private discussion that I will have with the stakeholders of this, but I'm a bit more upset with the way of managing it rather than with the incident itself." So Fred is also on the warpath.
I hope he's also represented by like an auto.
Yes, yeah. There's another Greek guy with billboards
in a crash.
Yeah,
Call
he's
Ash.
Like, yeah, he's got the billboards on the northbound lane, so they're like sort of competing too.
Something wrong? Call Ann Fong.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Wow. Hitting between
all the Bay Area greats.
All the Bay Area greats.
Sweet
Next
James
we're going to be talking about the Shen Yun next.
I think that's everywhere, Danny.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. It might even be in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. We're back. Abu Dhabi Doo, as your favorite cartoon bear said, presumably in the Arab version of that.
It was not a bear.
Was that?
Who's bear?
Oh, wait. No, you're right.
Flintstones.
That's.
Oh no, Flintstones. You're right.
It's Fred Flintstone. Yeah.
I was thinking. Yeah, I don't know.
He wore. It wasn't a bear.
I grew up in Ireland. We didn't have
like
television.
a leopard skin.
Anyway, unbeknownst to most of us, for most of today, we are in fact going to Yas Marina this weekend for another late race. Although if you live in Europe, it'll be on the total opposite side of your day, as you were expecting from this one. We're back in Abu Dhabi, the Yas Marina Grand Prix, which first graced our F1 seasons in the year 2009, has been the final race of the year since then. Interlagos was for the period prior to that. It was always a late race in the calendar due to the time of year and the weather in the region. And similarly, Abu Dhabi is in this part of the calendar because for large parts of the year, as you probably know from Qatar and Bahrain, this part of the world is incredibly warm. It's still quite warm. I've been to this race. I've been to practice here. I used to visit Dubai quite a bit. And the temperatures there in the evenings are generally, as I'm sure Drew will let us know pretty soon, quite high. It's a very comfortable part of the world to be in during that period of the year. It's a 58 lap race. It's slightly shorter than it used to be. You may have forgotten, like I did, that they actually repurposed or reprofiled this track in 2021, where they basically shaved off two sort of low speed corner areas. The first of which was turn 4 into 5. There was a chicane as they came down the hill. You might remember there was a sharp left-hand chicane, which then went right, very tight, very difficult to overtake there. And then that brought you down to the wide hairpin at turn 5, which went onto the back straight. So it was kind of tricky to overtake getting into turn 5 because everyone sort of got concertina down at this chicane. So they got rid of the chicane entirely. I mean, Abu Dhabi is one of these tracks that has multiple configurations on it. When you're racing and they see the helicopter shot especially, you'll see all the different versions of the track that can be set up. So this road was actually there already. They just cut it off. But now it's straight from the top of that hill down into a much wider version of that hairpin. And it's a better overtaking spot as they enter the double DRS spot. Well, it's not double DRS, but back-to-back DRS zones that we have on the back of this track. It's after the second DRS zone where we used to have another one of these sort of slow speed areas. We had another bunch of sort of 90-degree looking things, a left and then a right-left chicane again kind of feeling to it. That was replaced by a super broad turn 9, which is an actual track reconfiguration, I believe, in this case, which is just a broad, low enough speed, but faster than the previous corners, left-hander that then brings you into that arena section underneath the hotel, which for the most part, there's not much overtaking happening there at all for a majority of reasons. The track itself has given us lots of great races in the past. It's another spectacle race. It won't be quite the spectacle as we enjoyed in Las Vegas, but of course there is the hotel that sort of encompasses the center of it, which has this very impressive light show around it. Again, not as impressive as the Sphere. This whole area was built as a sort of, tourist destination style stuff. Ferrari World is there. There's a bunch of hotels, there's golf courses, beaches, that type of thing. They have almost like a faux Monaco style, dock there as well with people on boats right beside the track. And it's given us great races over the years. Obviously, the crazy ending to the 2021 championship that we all remember. I believe it was 2009. It was the year well, I don't want to spoil that series. So it was the Braun year, let's say, was the first year. And then the next year was fantastic. The next year, the final was Sebastian Vettel's first championship, but technically 4 drivers entered that race who could have possibly won the championship. Really, it was between Webber, Vettel, and Alonso, and I think Hamilton needed to win and all of them to crash out or not to get in the top 10 to have a chance of winning it. And that was I remember that race quite well. And that was kind of when I was getting back into F1 after a little bit of a hiatus there in my early 20s. It's an interesting track. It I think it's the type of track that produces races when there's some I don't know, something to fight for. I'm not sure what there is to fight for. Maybe 4th position in the drivers.
We got some battles,
some constructor goodies down there in the mid pack. So yeah, I guess I'll be keeping my eye on that. But yeah, fun track. The last thing to say about it, sorry, is that of course this is the ceremonial. It's the actual end to the F1 season, but also they sort of mirror that, I guess, in the from dawn till dusk. Well, maybe not till dawn, but definitely into dusk. The sunsetting of the F1 calendar. They've the race starts with some daylight and then ends in the nighttime, and I've always appreciated that aesthetic value of Yas Marina, if nothing else.
Danny loves a good sunset.
I do.
5 p.m. local time, the race is. Yeah. Qualifying at 6 p.m. local time, where it will be around 78 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 Celsius. 1% chance of precipitation. And we're looking about 19 kilometers an hour or 12 miles an hour out of the northwest wind. On race day, less wind, less precipitation, 0%. And about the same temperature, 79 degrees or 26 degrees Celsius. But yeah, as you mentioned, Danny, we do have some battles that will conclude in the final race of the season. Max Verstappen, of course, has secured the Drivers' Championship. He currently has 549 points. Sergio Perez, with his 3rd place in Las Vegas, did secure 2nd place. He has 273 points. Lewis Hamilton's in 3rd with 232. And then a 2-way tie between Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso in that 4th place with 200 points. Right behind him, Lando Norris with 195.
Ooh.
Charles Leclerc has 188 points. He's in 7th place. George Russell is in 8th with 160. Then big jump down to Oscar Piastri in 9th with 89. In 10th place is Stroll with 73. Pierre Gasly has 62. Esteban Ocon has 58. Alex Albon has 27. Yuki Tsunoda has 13. Valtteri Bottas is in 15th place with 10 points. Then we've got Hulkenberg with 9. Ricardo and Zhou both with 6. Magnussen has 3. Lawson has 2. And Logan Sargent has 1. Nick DeVries, 0. There are also battles in the constructor standings. Red Bull Racing, of course, has secured it with 822 points. Mercedes is in 2nd with 392. That's 4 points ahead. 4 points ahead of Ferrari with 388. McLaren is in 4th with 284. Aston Martin, 11 points behind with 273. Alpine's in 6th with 120. Williams has 28. Alpha Tauri has 21. Alfa Romeo has 16. And Gene Haas and team have 12.
Yeah, so realistically, the only one there is Mercedes Ferrari, but that's a good one. That's a good, and the momentum is in Ferrari's favor.
It's true. If you would like to join the standings yourself, you can do so for the final race of the season using the link in our show notes. The podium from the Las Vegas Grand Prix, we've got a 2-way tie for 2nd place between London FC and Kimmy's Proctologist.
Jesus.
With 386 points. But the winner from Las Vegas is with 398 points. Which pedal is the gas?
Good
Does
stuff.
pretty well for not knowing that.
I'm still thinking about Kimmy's Proctologist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And some familiar names up at the overall podium. We've got in 3rd place, Horner to the Max. In 2nd place, Paying the Stroll Toll. And in 1st, Time to Call _Gene.
Always.
You can also send us an email if you like. No phone calls yet. But you can send us an email, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials in the show notes. That's us around the internet. Do you want to take it around the world, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Hey, oh, yeah.
MotoGP is in Valencia, Spain at the Ricardo Tormo circuit for their final round.
They had a circuit there. Why were we driving on the streets for so long? They had a circuit the whole time. They were hiding it from us.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Guess it's only for two-wheeled vehicles. Formula 2 will be supporting Formula 1 in Abu Dhabi at the Yas Marina circuit.
Yas.
We've also got the Repco Supercars at Adelaide, the Adelaide Parkland circuit in Adelaide, Australia, for the Valo Adelaide 500.
Valo. What's Valo?
VALO. It's all caps. Don't know what that is.
Valorant. It's a video game.
Got it.
That's according. I don't know what Valo is. If I type in Valo Australia, I'm probably just going to get Valorant Australia. Oh no. Valo. VAILO?
Nope. VALO.
Nope. No idea. Innovations of the world. Immediately, I'm like, it's bullshit. It's some
they
bullshit.
do innovations.
They do innovations. Yeah.
Very high altitude, low opening.
Valo jump. Yeah.
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 And space. Formula 1. Maybe you've heard of it. Its final race is this weekend. News to everyone.
It's all over. We're done.
Yeah.
Wrapping it up.
Friday.
We ran the numbers. We're not going to be carbon neutral, so we just decided to pack it in.
All these extra races were actually way over budget on the carbon. So much carbon.
Friday, November 24th. Free Practice 1 is 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, followed by Free Practice 2 at 8 a.m. Eastern, also ESPN2. Saturday, November 25th. Free Practice 3 at 5:30 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2, followed by qualifying at 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2. And the race, everyone, Sunday, November 26th at 8 a.m. on ESPN. And that's what's happening this weekend. Danny, what happened?
Do you want to know?
No.
Do you want to know? I don't pick the days, right? Know. I'm like a fortune teller, right? Like I don't pick the cards. I just have to read what they are, you know? All right, November 22nd.
You just stack the deck with a bunch of death cards.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Definitely 2 cards could be possibly drawn here, and at least one of them is... Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. For the rest of the world, the death of Ayrton Senna was a tragic and terrible accident, but for the Williams team, the nightmare continued for years afterwards. After a lengthy investigation by the Italian authorities, Williams technical director Patrick Head and former designer Adrian Newey were charged with culpable homicide in 1996. This may be the worst thing I've ever read in this podcast. They fought the charges, and eventually on this day in 1999, the Court of Appeals in Bologna ruled that they were not responsible for the Brazilian's death.
This is a quirk of Italian law, I learned from Adrian Newey's book. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That somebody needs to be blamed, or
yes.
there's some thing. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I'm unsurprised that that there are quirks in Italian law, considering it is thousands of years old, probably.
It may also factor into the Amanda Knox story.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean,
another documentary I really remember liking.
Yes. I not at the risk of painting an entire nation with a brush. There does seem to be lots of instances where Italian courts where there's some thing that doesn't read quite right to non-Italians. So yeah, maybe there's...
Listen, Danny, it's not a science.
It's all, the city-states. You gotta, if you commit a crime one place, you just go to the other city-state and then they sell you back. It's all...
Wow, Danny just deleted Italy as a
I'm smart.
political body.
San Marino. That's right. That's where I'll flee to if any Italians listen to this podcast. but not where the race is, because that's technically not in San Marino. Senna's great rival, Alain Prost, was also in trouble today in 2001 when his team, Prost Grand Prix, went into receivership with reported debts of 19.1 million. Despite branding itself as the French national F1 team, Prost was not successful. A team and financial difficulties began to mount when engine supplier Peugeot quit F1 and Prost was forced to pay for Ferrari units. So overall, November 22nd, not a bad time for Patrick Head and Adrian Newey, I guess. Not the best day of their lives, but certainly not the worst. Alain Prost will probably not want to remember November 22nd. And neither will I. Hopefully we have another 6 years at least of
it was not the worst thing that ever happened on that date.
Is it?
Is
there some
assassination?
Was it actually? Jesus. Well, there you go. Oh, just all around bad day. Nothing good. Apologies to there is a non-zero chance that one of our listeners' birthday is November 22nd. So I am very sorry in advance.
I would say we have upwards of 365 listeners, so it's possible.
One of them. Chances are. Roll the roulette wheel.
Final thoughts, Danny, ahead of the final race of the season.
If any Max Verstappen fans have gotten to this part of the podcast, my apologies.
We shed him back in 2021. Don't worry.
I'm sorry. Your boy's a great racer, and maybe it's a byproduct of the fact that he is such a good racer that we barely talk about him because he's just hanging out in first position. But maybe next year we'll have a bit more battles. I'll say the same thing I often say at this time of year is just drink it up, enjoy it. F1 always feels like a big hole in my heart during the off season. So I'm a bit shocked. I'm a bit disappointed in a way. I thought I had another 2 weeks of F1. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of a little bit shocked that it's actually going to be done now this weekend. So I for one will try and enjoy it as much as I can.
Rob, if only we had something to watch after the F1 is done. Such as
you're endorsing the Initial D idea?
Oh my god!
Where we just turn this into we cover Initial D's like first series as like a season of Shift F1 episodes.
Yes, like in lore.
We were talking about Danny doing the track walk of the mountain every day.
every same track, just every single time. You know, as we've seen, these hairpins, boy, you really need to dig deep into your spirit. And to tune yourself with your car
and drop your tire into the drainage ditch.
Yes, exactly.
The other final thought, I just wanted to call out this weird thing. Jared Leto reciting very seriously.
Oh yeah.
The lyrics to Viva Las Vegas was just an amazing, like, creative choice. In kicking off the Grand Prix broadcast. That was incredible.
Can I say, Donny Osmond, was that pre-recorded, or does that man just have the voice of an angel? It was on the national anthem.
No, this I didn't say.
Oh God, he did the national anthem.
Oh, wow.
He did, and it was like unbelievable. I was like looking at his lips, going, "There's no way he's singing it this clean."
He is known for singing.
Well, there you go. Maybe he killed it. Maybe he did it. He was better than 30 Seconds to Mars in the bloody Thursday opening show or whatever.
Wow, I missed so much ancillary entertainment.
Oh, dude.
I really got to go back and watch the periphery.
You don't. Except Donny Osmond. Okay. Donny Osmond singing over the truck, spraying that concrete on the oil. Good times.
I can't wait for the next Las Vegas Grand Prix. If you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.
Meow.